riser. While he nearly always appeared at her frequent dinner parties, playing the part of host to admiration, for he could be as smooth and complacent as the most civilized of her guests, so long as he was not required to keep it up too long. In any case, Diana's father and her first husband were serving officers, and all her life she had been accustomed to separation. She was always delighted to see her husband, and he to see her. They never quarrelled now that all reasons for disagreement were gone, and in fact this was probably the best possible arrangement for a pair with nothing in common but love and friendship, and a series of strange, surprising, shared adventures. They never quarrelled, except when Stephen brought up the question of marriage according to the Roman rite, for their wedding had been performed in the brisk naval fashion by the captain of HMS Oedipus, an amiable young man and a fine navigator, but no priest. And since Stephen, being of mixed Irish and Catalan parentage, was a papist, he was a bachelor still as far as the church was concerned. Yet no persuasion, no kind words, and harsh ones he dared not use, could move Diana. She did not reason, but simply and steadily refused. There were times when her obstinacy grieved him, for apart from his own strong feelings on the matter, he seemed to make out some obscure, superstitious dread of a strange sacrament mingled with the general English dislike of Rome. Yet there were also times when it added a certain not wholly disagreeable air of intrigue to the connection. Not that this ever occurred to the eminently respectable Mrs. Broad of the Grapes, who liked her house to be just so, and who would countenance nothing whatsoever in the roving line, a landlady who would at once turn away any man she suspected of leading out a wench. Mrs. Broad had known Dr. Maturin for many years. She was thoroughly used to him, and when he told her that he meant to stay at the inn, she only stared for a while, amazed that any man born could sleep away from such a ravishing lady, and then accepted it as one of the doctor's little ways, with perfect calm. Some of his little ways had indeed been quite surprising in the past, seeing that they ranged from the quartering of badgers rescued from a baiting in her coal shed, to the introduction of separate limbs, and even of whole orphans for dissection when they were in good supply towards the end of winter. But she'd grown used to them little by little. The doctor's cello booming through the night, and skeletons in every cupboard were nothing now to Mrs. Broad, and nothing now could astonish her for long. She also thoroughly approved of Diana, whom she'd come to know well during her first startled stay at the inn, where Stephen had brought her when they landed in England. Mrs. Broad liked her for her beauty, which she candidly admired, and for her friendliness. No airs nor graces, and not above taking a little posset with a person behind the bar, and for her evident affection for the doctor. Mrs. Maturin was very often at the Grapes, bringing shirts, blue worsted stockings, shoe buckles, leaving messages, darting in for small sums of money, for although Diana was far richer than Stephen, she was even more improvident. It seemed a strange kind of marriage, but Mrs. Broad had once seen Mrs. Maturin in one of the palace coaches with Lady Jersey, royal footman up behind, and she had an indistinct notion that Diana was something at court, which would naturally prevent her from living like mortals of ordinary flesh and blood. Diana had been there still more often in recent days, because the doctor was going to sea again with his particular friend Jack Aubrey, a post captain in the Royal Navy, once known in the service as Lucky Jack Aubrey for his good fortune in taking prizes, but now so miserably involved in his affairs that he was glad to accept an unenviable temporary command, the Worcester, of 74 guns, one of the surviving 40 Thieves, that notorious set of line of battleships built by contract with a degree of dishonesty in their scantlings, knees, fastenings, in their whole construction, that excited comment even in a time of widespread corruption. Very strong comment indeed from those who had to take them to sea. She was to carry him to the Mediterranean, to Admiral Thornton's squadron, and the interminable blockade of the French fleet in Toulon. And since Stephen was to go to sea, it was obviously necessary that his sea chest should be prepared. He'd packed it himself on a great many occasions before this, and it had always satisfied his modest needs, even when he was a great way from shore, let alone in the Mediterranean, with Malta or Barcelona only a few 100 miles to leeward, according to the wind. But neither Diana nor Mrs. Broad could bear his method of tossing things in pell-mell, the more fragile objects wrapped in his stockings, and they both perpetually interfered. Tissue paper, orderly layers of this and that, neatness, even labels. The brass-bound chest was open now, and Dr. Maturin was fishing in it, hoping to find his best neckcloth, the frilled white neckcloth, the size of a moderate stunsel that he was to put on for Diana's farewell dinner. He fished with a surgical retractor, one of the most efficient instruments known to science, but nothing did he find. And when at last the steel claws grated on the bottom, he called out, "Mrs. Broad! Mrs. Broad! Who has hidden my neckcloth?" Mrs. Broad walked in without ceremony, the neckcloth over her arm, although Stephen was in his shirt. "Why, oh, why did you take it away?" he cried. "Have you no bowels, Mrs. Broad?" "Mrs. Maturin said it was to be new starched," said Mrs. Broad. "You wouldn't have liked to have your frill all limp, I'm sure." "There's nothing I should like better," muttered Stephen, folding it about him. "And Mrs. Maturin says you're to put on your nice new pumps," said Mrs. Broad, "which I've scratched the soles." "I cannot walk to Half Moon Street in new pumps," said Stephen. "No, sir," said Mrs. Broad patiently. "You're to go in a chair like Mrs. M. said this morning. The men have been waiting at the tap this 10 minutes past." Her eye wandered to the open chest, as neat as an apple pie not half an hour ago. "Oh, Dr. Maturin, fie!" she cried. "Oh, fie, Doctor, fie!" "Oh, fie, Stephen," said Diana, tweaking his cravat straight. "How can you be so intolerably late? Yellow's been slavering in the drawing-room this last age, and the others'll be here any minute." "There was a mad bull in Smithfield," said Stephen. "Does one really have to pass through Smithfield to reach Mayfair?" asked Diana. "One does not, as you know very well, but I suddenly remembered that I was to call at Bart's. And listen, my dear, you have never been in time in your life, to my certain knowledge, so I beg you will keep your irony for some more suitable occasion." "Why, Stephen, you're as furious as a mad bull yourself, I find," said Diana, kissing him. "And to think that I bought you such a beautiful present. Come upstairs and look at it. Yellow can receive any early worms." As she passed the drawing-room, she called in, "Yellow, pray do the civil for us if anyone should come. We shall not be a minute." Yellow was almost domesticated at Half Moon Street, an absurdly beautiful young man, an exceedingly wealthy Lithuanian now attached to the Swedish embassy. He and Stephen and Jack Aubrey had been imprisoned in France together, and they'd escaped together, which accounted for an otherwise unlikely close friendship. "There," she said proudly, pointing to her bed, where there stood a gold-mounted dressing-case that was also a canteen and a backgammon board. Little drawers pulled in and out. Ingenious slides and folding legs transformed it into a wash-hand-stand, a writing desk, a lectern, and looking-glasses and candle-holders appeared on either side. "Acushla," he said, drawing her close, "this is regal splendor. This is imperial magnificence. The physician of the fleet has nothing finer. I'm so grateful, my dear." And grateful, infinitely touched, he was. While Diana put the gleaming object through its paces, explaining how it worked and telling him how she'd stood over the work